I'd like to talk to you about the DAQ file locations and some features of the miniSim that pertain to that. So I've got the miniSim up here, and I will just sort of drop into a scenario really quick, and by doing so create a DAQ file. Okay, so there we are. You'll notice that in the information panel here, there's some information indicating the participant, the experiment, and the DAQ output. So this is where the DAQ file, which contains all of the information stored during the drive, is going to reside. By default, we set it up on the D drive, but it's possible that it'll be in other locations than the DAQ subfolder. And at that point, it breaks down according to the name of the experiment and the name of the subject. So to avoid clutter, help organize things. In fact, if I hit stop now and go now to the D:\DAQ directory, there's a test exp folder which corresponds to the experiment name. This is the default, by the way. You can change that. So yeah, then test subj, test subject, that's there, and then this would be the DAQ file that I just generated. In addition to that, there's a report file which contains some sort of higher level measurements associated with the drive, and also a last position. So this will help the miniSim sort of start from the last place if there's a crash or something along those lines. So returning to the miniSim, looking under the DAQ tab. DAQ incidentally stands for data acquisition. It's a abbreviation we use quite a bit. In the sort of standard mode, you have the freedom to rename the experiment and participant. So if you want to work along those lines, you certainly can do that. Additionally, you can override the default DAQ file name with one of your choosing, and put it into a different drive, for example, if you'd like. However, if you want to have a little bit more restricted set of possibilities, in order to reduce the number of errors that might occur during, a lengthy study, you might want to take advantage of the data collection mode setting. Again, under settings tab, there's data collection mode, and this essentially changes the notions of what's allowed for the participant and experiment names, and as well as the scenarios that are available to run. So coming to the miniSim directory, I'll show you how to set this up here. In the data folder, in RCM data, you'll find a file called experimentconfig.txt. If it's not already there, you can just create it. It's a simple text file. This particular one I've set up in such a fashion. There are 3 columns essentially. The first would be the name of the experiment, the second would be the name of the subject, and the third would list the scenarios which are appropriate for that subject and experiment. You can have many different experiments as well as different subjects. For example, these are all in experiment 1, this is all in experiment 2. Also, it's frequently a good idea to create a test experiment and subject for when you're developing, so that you can generate, make drives and not have to worry about this development data getting mixed in with the study data. The scenario list is separated by commas. A new line begins another entry. Also, if there are no entries in the scenario column, that means all of them are available to run. So coming back here, we can again click the data collection mode checkbox and sort of make these settings take effect. Now, looking at it again, let me bring this back up for reference. Looking at this, we see that the experiments becomes a drop down now. I can't edit it, but I can choose from one of the previously selected choices, and then the subjects or participants will correspond to the ones that are available for that particular experiment. Also, the scenario drop-down is going to be different now. It's restricted. There are, in fact, if I exit data collection mode, there are, in fact, scenario A, B, C, D, E, and F in this this layout that I've sort of set up. But by setting the data collection mode on and picking a particular experiment participant, now this list is restricted to only those which are allowed for that participant. Also, when you start Drive, there's a confirmation dialog to make sure that you're running with the settings that you expected to have. Hitting no will bring you back here. Hitting yes will start the drive up. And then you'll notice that the DAQ file winds up in the same place, essentially, as described earlier. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the comment field here. During a drive, or I'm sorry, I believe it's before and after a drive, you can write comments which pertain to the drive, which may have not been covered by the protocol. So maybe something like this, and then we can add it, and this is where you would add the comments. This is where the sort of running tally of comments is put. When I then start a drive, notice that it records the time of the run, and then stop again. If I come back to the folder where the DAQ file was stored, there'll be a file that has a suffix of notes.txt, which is going to have the same comments. And again, that's going to be it's going to have the prefix which is identical to the DAQ file. Incidentally, the DAQ file name breaks out with the name of the scenario being driven, and then a timestamp, which is year, month, date, hour, minute, and second in 24-hour notation. That will be the time that the DAQ file was created. The date modified will have essentially the time when the drive ended.
That concludes this lesson. Thanks for joining us.